Bonsai are never finished. Look at this nice arakawa Japanese maple, and you can already see this is a pretty nice bonsai. It is, however, not perfect, and I'm going to take some drastic steps to improve this over the year to come. In this video I'm going to remove a big branch, probably using air layering. I'm going to remove another big branch in the back just by cutting it off. I'm going to wire out the whole tree. Then, come spring, I'm going to take it out of the pot, repot it, plant it deeper to improve the nebari, and then I'm going to let it grow. And once I'm in the middle of summer and I've pruned it back for the first time and I've separated the air layer, that is when hopefully this video is ready for release. So in this video a lot of work is going to be done. Everything about further developing a Japanese maple on an arakawa maple. The first step in improving your tree is of course analyzing the tree. Let's analyze this tree together and see what the strong points and the flaws are. Well, a strong point is a very nice powerful trunk, very old bark. The root spread from this angle is pretty good, but from this side, which is more of the front for me, it is not so great. You see here there are roots missing. This branch is new, it's only 2 years old, it sprouted spontaneously here on the trunk, and I really want it to be a little bit lower. So it really is more of an welcoming, inviting low branch rather than an upper canopy branch. Now I have this as a front because I want this trunk line to be dominant, and this should be more of a sub trunk rather than an equal trunk. If I move it like this, now these trunks are equal and they're competing very much for the attention. Not great. However, these branches are now better positioned to welcome you into the tree. So that is a difficult point that I find this tree has. Well, one of the things that you now can also see, if you look here in the top, this branch I pulled over last year to the side to become the leader of the trunk. In the back, however, there's another side trunk. This now comes very much to the front. This goes more upward, and there are some branches here that I could also consider using as the new leader. And that is actually what I intend to do. So the top of this and the top of that branch, they are actually taking over the tree substantially. I'm going to just wire out everything. So there's a lot of young branches that have grown this year and last year. I've spent 2 years getting this back into health. So it's quite young. There's some pruning leftovers. I can remove those. And I wire the whole tree out to just have a more open space. Now let's try to get this out. It's a gentle saw, cutting this at the same angle as the attached branch. Naturally, for a good healing over, a little bit of a cleanup of the edges and creating a bit of a dimple here in the wood aids enormously. And then I'll add a little bit of cut paste, which will help the cambium to extend over the newly created wound, so that hopefully in 2 years or so this will close over completely. And here in the top I'm just removing a few of these branches, so it creates a little bit more space, and the rest I'll just wire out and down just like this, creating space for the new top to grow into this whole area. This is now nice and open, allowing this to develop a lot faster. Now for the big one here, remove the bark here, and I'm going to put sphagnum moss around the branch. It is of course not an ideal time of year. We are still in the middle of winter. Spring is another 8 weeks away, but we'll see. I have removed all the bark here just below this widened section, and I hope that there's going to be enough roots there. Then this is going to be a nice little tree. This sacrifice I'm of course going to leave. Now I have fresh sphagnum moss. I'll put the sphagnum around it, wrap it up with foil, and then just leave it in place just like this and see what spring brings. Now if we look here from the left side onto the tree, what you see is that this is a nice side branch for the tree, but this one is also quite heavy, and here this branch section actually goes all the way into the top right here. This is way too heavy for what I want at this space. So I can, of course, wire these out and down, but there is a nice branch here. And this also has a branch that could come down eventually. So I am also here going to remove the coarse growth in top. Everything here is now gone. This lightens up this part of the canopy and allows these branches to extend further. Again, this needs to get a lot stronger, and for that it needs space to grow out in. Here this branch is now way too long and too heavy, so I am going to reduce that significantly. And this way I'm now going to go through the whole tree. Here you also get very strong growth. I don't want very strong growth here because this is not the top of the tree. This is the top of the tree. So I can remove it all the way to here, which is actually what I might have to do eventually. But for now I'm just going to reduce to here and see during the styling what else I need. When I prune for juvenation and thinning and taper. And basically this is what you can see here. This is an old branch that I cut earlier in the season right there. It was a lot longer to stop it from thickening, and I'm now going to remove it completely. And what you see, that I now have two nice little side branches here. However, this is still quite long for the position that it's in, and I can go down even further to these two. And what you then see is that you get movement and taper here in the branch. So this is where I made the previous cut with the two side branches, and I can go down one further all the way here. I've got thinning of the branch, so taper, a little bit of a direction change, and there's a short internode, and another short internode. Now here I could go as far as well, but I don't want to remove all the foliage, so I'm just removing half of this one. The rest I'll wire out. All the pruning has been done. I now can start looking at some wiring, except for this branch that I said earlier maybe I should remove it, and if you now look at it, this interferes with this branch, and this branch is going to stay, so this will have to go away. And I realize there are people who are really concerned with the amount of material that I remove from my tree. But particularly in the top, you need to make sure that you keep the growth under control, otherwise it gets way too heavy and it loses this feeling of a light and airy tree. I am going to push this part very much, so I'm going to create a crown that is about this size over the next couple of years. That means that there's a lot of space needed here in this area. By creating this space now, I allow this to move in. I keep this reduced a little bit because this trunk I don't want to fatten at all. I want this to be thicker than that eventually. So there's a lot of growing in the top needed, and I need to hold this back a lot. Well, I'm going to use 1.5 millimeters and maybe 2 millimeters of wire, predominantly aluminium. I have some 1 millimeters as well, but I feel that is quite light except for the smallest of twigs. Now I noticed here already, it's not pruned properly everywhere. This is a 3-way split, and now it's a 2-way split. I don't want to wire too many of these small branches, I just want to wire the secondaries of this tree. That way I keep the natural shape of the twigs somewhat. Now, as a rule of thumb, start with the thickest wire that you think you're going to be using, and start with the lowest branches and then work your way up. That typically is the easiest to work. That way you first set the main branches in place, and you work first on the lowest branches, and as you work your way up, you always have branches above your hands that have not been wired, so you can't disturb recent wiring. Now this might not be enough to hold it in place. I'm actually using white loose loops because I don't want to create too much damage on the bark. I might have to use a tension wire to put this in place in the end, but we'll see how this goes. Right, let's see how this behaves now. It's gonna just go back into the garden, and once the buds are starting to pop open, I'll repot it. But for now, this is it. I'm going to protect it a little bit from frost. I am very uncertain whether this will work. Normally air layering is done a little bit later in the season, but now it's at least in place. I can't forget it anymore. Here in the top I didn't wire at all. I didn't prune all that much. This I just want to let extend a little bit and get stronger. And for the rest, I think the tree is pretty nice and open. And over time I do expect this to become a really nice bonsai. It is early spring, and although I am quite sure there's no problems here, let's just check whether it has not calloused over during winter. I'm going to open it up, very quickly take a peek, and if everything is fine, then I'm just going to wrap it up again. Now, where is the beginning of this wire? So no callousing over at any point. This should do just fine. And now I'm going to wrap it up again, and let's see where it roots over the next couple of months. And in early summer, this arakawa is really responding. Can you believe it? These sort of sacrifices on here. And that is of course here all connected to the air layer, which I'm going to open up in a second and see what it is doing. Next to that, I've checked the wires, but the wires, they can stay on for a little bit more. They're not starting to bite in. And I of course put them on very loosely. But what is important is I've seen that there's now all sorts of inner buds that have pushed, resulting in short internodes here on the inside. And actually these older branches I could potentially now start pruning back. So I need to thin it out. And here there's a whole cluster of little branches. Let me show you what I mean. And I'm going to remove a lot of the branches here. So this is one of the branches that I pruned last year. You can see still there's a little cut mark. These are nice and healthy extensions. But here at the base you see lots and lots of fine growth has appeared. Now I don't want all that. I like this little branch that comes down. That means that pretty much everything else needs to go. So I have this continuation of the main branch this direction and a little side branch here. So here I'm going to remove everything that comes off it, except for the one going down. I have to be a little bit gentle, just like that. And on the other side I want to remove everything. Just like that. And this is one of our friends. Look at that. Going from larvae to adult stage. Now further in the back, I don't know if you can see, there's this little branch that has just sprouted up between the two main branches. I'm going to remove that as well. And this one is opposite of that one, so this one is also going to go out. In this way you really thin out the crown of the tree a lot, by everywhere removing everything that is not a separation into twos. That is something that occurs throughout the tree, and particularly here in the top. Here you had a two-way split, but then there's this tiny little side branch and that has very short internodes. So it's really nice to prune off the long one of the long ones actually. Now here the internode length between these two is the same. So I'm going to remove this one. Going to shorten this one and leave it at just one leaf. And this way I've weakened this area considerably because it is the top of the tree. It otherwise gets way too strong. And at the same time I'm looking at all these branches where I have new growth and I see whether I can see a growing tip, but I don't. So I'm going to leave it in place for now. I'm quite curious to see whether there's any root formation because, to be honest, we're quite far into the growing season. By now it should have started to root a little bit. And if it hasn't, I'm going to check the callus and I'm going to maybe scar the callus a little bit and add more rooting hormone to it. It's been a very strange spring this year, so not everything is growing as it should. So it has not quite calloused over. That's a nice conclusion. Ah, there is a singular root right there. So I'm going to leave this on for another week. 2 weeks, maybe 3, and then there should be plenty of roots. But look, that's a very good sign. In fact, the fact that this has now rooted means that I could also consider putting a little pot with substrate or a little baggie with substrate rather than this sphagnum. I don't really like sphagnum in the wound because it's really hard to get rid of once the roots have grown into it. Here we go. So this is just a pot that I've opened up at the bottom. And that can now slide over, making sure the root doesn't sit at the bottom of the pot, but somewhere in the top third or so. And then of course just filling it up with substrate and watering it. Now I do like where this is headed. Just another 2, maybe 3 weeks, and then I can cut this one off. And yeah, then this whole area is opened up and this crown can be spread out a little bit more. And then really it is getting very close to the image I had in mind initially. Well, it's been about 6 weeks. I'm sorry, I'm not very mobile, so I can't just pull the tree out and put it in front of a nice backdrop. But this air layer, this just gets to go. Ready to plant it up. I'll add a little bit of cut paste here so the wound heals better. I'm not going to make this any more difficult than it needs to be, as said. I'm still not mobile, so I'm just going to do this. Give you a quick peek at the roots. And then I'm just going to pop it in this pot, which is a little bit larger, but not overly large for the first 2 weeks. This is just going to stay out of the wind and out of the sun, so it can root into the pot properly. There we go. So it's not amazing, the rooting, but it is good enough. Let's remove this little stump. This aids the callus in rolling over the wound, and with that there's less risk of infections over winter. I noticed that first of all the base of this tree is really nice with lots of movement, good old bark and nice little side branches, so I don't want to plant it up too deep. I want to plant it quite shallow, but it is really tumbly. So yeah, as the queen says, off with her head. I'm not going to do any root work, that's all for spring. All done. Ready for watering and then shade for the next week or 2. One new little arakawa, nice for shohin. Now how does this look? This is the new top of the tree that needs to still grow out up to probably this level. The tree is nice and open. Yeah, I think it did well, to be honest. And you might be asking, how does the air layer do? This air layer is doing so well, it is even sprouting new leaves there and there. It lost a tiny little branch down below, but besides that, just ready to go. This was the start of the rebuild of an arakawa Japanese maple. This was growing bonsai. If you haven't done yet, subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, maybe you can share this video in social media. And if you don't want to do any of that, then at least go and have a look at my latest video. Or my video on pruning Japanese maple, might be interesting. See you next time. This was Jelle, growing bonsai.